After choice no longer needs preference, something else begins to loosen. Identity, not personality, not voice. Identity as the internal reference point that asks, what does this say about me? For most of our lives, expression is inseparable from identity. We speak to be understood. We create to be seen. We explain to locate ourselves. Words become markers. Actions become statements. Expression becomes a way of saying, this is who I am. And for a long time, that's functional. Identity gives coherence. It allows continuity. It helps others recognize us. But when presence becomes the ground, and action and choice arise without narrative, identity begins to feel heavy, not false, constraining. I noticed this shift when speaking became simpler. I would say something and notice there was no follow-up, no internal check, no concern about how it landed, no need to protect what I'd said. The words weren't owned. They were released, and nothing collapsed. Living without identity doesn't mean you stop expressing yourself. It means expression stops being a mirror. You're no longer watching yourself speak. You're not shaping words to reinforce a self-image. You're responding. Expression without identity feels lighter, not careless, unburdened. You're not carrying the extra weight of representation. Before, expression often came with tension. Is this accurate? Is this consistent? Does this align with how I see myself? Those questions create friction. Without identity, expression doesn't need to align with anything. It doesn't need to be consistent. It just needs to be honest in the moment. This honesty isn't raw or unfiltered. It's precise, because you're not performing. You're not curating a self. You're letting expression arise from contact with what's happening. This changes how speaking feels in the body. Before, you might have felt tightness, a need to get it right, a sense of risk. Now, speaking feels neutral. Words come, words go. You're not attached to them. You don't replay them afterward. You don't use them as evidence of who you are. They're just sounds used to communicate. Living without identity also changes how you listen. Before, listening was often partial. You were listening while preparing a response, while checking how what you heard fit with your view. Now, listening becomes fuller, not because you try harder, because there's no self-reference interrupting. You're not deciding who you are in relation to what's being said. You're just hearing it. This creates a different quality of connection. People feel met, not because you're empathizing intentionally, because nothing is in the way. Expression without identity also affects creativity. Before, creativity was personal. Your ideas, your voice, your output, that created pressure. You had to protect originality, maintain consistency, live up to an internal standard. Now, creativity feels impersonal. Not disconnected, unclaimed. Ideas arise. You work with them. They pass. You don't need them to represent you. This removes a lot of fear. Fear of judgment, fear of failure, fear of being misunderstood. If the expression isn't you, it can't threaten you, can be evaluated, can be changed, can be discarded, and none of that touches your sense of being. This doesn't make expression dull. It makes it alive, because it's not constrained by self-protection. You're not asking, will this make me look good? Or is this who I want to be? You're asking, what's true to say right now? And sometimes you don't even ask. You respond. Expression without identity also changes how you relate to silence. Silence no longer feels like absence. It's not a failure to express. It's just another form of response. You don't rush to fill it to maintain an image. You let it be, and that silence often communicates more than words could. This stage can feel vulnerable, because identity was a buffer. It gave you something to stand behind. Without it, expression feels exposed. But that exposure isn't dangerous. It's clean. There's nothing to defend. You're not being revealed. There's no fixed self to reveal. You're just participating. Living without identity also changes how feedback lands. Before, feedback often felt personal. Praise affirmed identity. Criticism threatened it. Now, feedback becomes information, useful or not. You don't internalize it. You don't resist it either. You adjust if it makes sense. You don't if it doesn't. There's no self to protect. This makes collaboration easier. You're not guarding territory. You're working with what's here. Expression without identity also affects how you show up in conflict. Before, conflict triggered defense. You had a position to protect. Now, conflict is simpler. You state what's happening. You listen. You respond. You're not arguing for who you are. You're addressing what's occurring. This doesn't mean you agree. It means disagreement isn't loaded. You don't need to win to preserve yourself. This stage often brings a sense of impersonality, not coldness. Impersonality in the sense that life isn't revolving around me. Expression happens, action happens, choice happens, but there's no center organizing it. This can feel unsettling if identity was your anchor, but something else anchors you now. Presence. Presence doesn't need a name. It doesn't need to be represented. It simply allows expression to move through. Living without identity doesn't mean you lose uniqueness. Uniqueness remains. Your body, your voice, your timing, but uniqueness isn't claimed. It's not defended. It's just how life expresses here. This removes comparison. You're not trying to stand out or fit in. You're not measuring yourself against others. You're expressing as part of the whole. This stage often feels like relief. You didn't realize how much energy went into maintaining identity. Consistency, coherence, story. Without that maintenance, expression becomes effortless. Not because you've mastered communication, because you're not filtering it through self-concept. Living without identity also changes how you relate to the past. Before, past expressions defined you. You felt the need to be consistent. Now, the past doesn't bind you. You don't need to explain changes. You don't need to reconcile contradictions. You're allowed to speak differently today than you did before. Not because you evolved, because today is different. This is deeply freeing. You're not trapped by your own history. You're not living up to previous versions. You're responding now. Expression without identity also changes how you relate to truth. Truth isn't something you possess. It's something that arises in context. You don't claim it. You don't defend it. You speak it when it appears. And then you let it go. This removes a great deal of rigidity. You're not attached to being right. You're attached to being present. Season 3 is about living from what remains when the inner scaffolding has fallen away. Presence remains. Action remains. Choice remains. Expression remains. But identity as an organizing center is no longer required. You don't need to know who you are to speak honestly. You don't need to define yourself to create. You don't need to represent anything to show up. You express because life is expressing. Through you, as you, without ownership. If you've noticed yourself less concerned with how you come across, if words feel easier without needing to explain yourself, if expression feels lighter without being shallow, you're not disappearing. You're becoming transparent. And transparency doesn't erase you. It lets life move freely. And if this reflection met something real in you, liking the video helps it reach others who may be experiencing the same release without having language for it. If someone came to mind while listening, sharing it may help them feel less alone in this quieter way of expressing. You're welcome to subscribe if you'd like to continue through this season, not to refine identity, but to notice how expression flows when there's no one left to perform, unfinished, and speaking.